I will be with you. When you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, see, you still had to walk through the fire. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. So, I like the sound of all of that. And Isaiah, he was saying, God was telling Isaiah, when you go through all these troubles, and you will go through them, I'm going to take care of you during that time. Also look up great men of God or women of God who you know have gone through the fire, gone through the struggle, and read what they have said. I like to read a lot of Charles Spurgeon, and I found this quote. He says, whatever your difficulties and trials and sorrows, all is well with you, if God is your delight, and His presence your joy. So Jehovah-Shamma, the Lord is there. We've got to remind ourselves sometimes that God is there. I believe the toughest time in my life was when my mother was dying of cancer. It wasn't her death. I thought her death when she died, I thought that was going to be the toughest thing. The toughest thing was her having the cancer. Yeah, and it was 4 years of suffering for her and suffering for me and my brother. And it was, I felt God was a million miles away. And a lot of times it was hard to pray. It was hard to come to church sometimes. And I'm not a person that walks up to people and spills all my problems to them. But deep down inside, in everyday life, it was a struggle. It was a pain, and I felt like God was not there. But was He there? Yes, He was there the entire time. Amen. He is present with us. We're not in heaven yet. That's the only answer I have. And we can't blame God for those dark times, and I'll tell you why. Because if we want to know God's plan for us, go back to the Garden of Eden. That was God's plan. That was His plan. Adam and Eve had other plans. The devil had other plans and ushered in all this. If God had killed Adam and Eve and started all over, you and I wouldn't exist. We would not be here. God wanted you to exist. God wanted me to exist. So He allowed it to continue so that we would be in existence. If He killed off Adam and Eve, I wouldn't be here. I would not exist. But God didn't want that. God wanted me in existence. He wanted me as one of His children. So He allowed it to continue, and He still allowed it to continue because He's got more children that He wants to exist as well. But once that last soul is saved, He's putting to a stop to all of this suffering and all of this pain, and He's going to usher back in what He originally planned in the Garden of Eden. And that just kind of really simply simplifies all of it. But the next thing that Jehovah-Shamma teaches us is that we need to live for the Lord right now. If we are the temples of God, then we need to make sure we're living holy and righteous lives. If we're teaching the world how our God is, we need to make sure we're living by His commandments. We're to come out and be separate. We're to give up our sinful habits. And here's the thing about the presence of God. Some people have no fear. The knowledge that God is always present should motivate us to fear and obey Him. If God is always present. See, the Israelites, they had no fear. They did whatever they wanted in their own eyes. They lived sinfully. They lived immorally. They sacrificed their own children to God. The Israelites did. They did a lot of this stuff that I'm saying to you right now in the temple of God. Imagine that. They did a lot of that immorality, a lot of that child sacrifice. They worshiped idols right in the temple that Solomon had built for the glory of God. They did a lot of that in God's house. Nothing was sacred anymore to Israel. And we condemn the Israelites for their sinful hearts, but are we living as if God exists and lives inside of us and is in the church? Are we living that way? God is always present, but are we always putting Him first? Is really the question we have to ask ourselves. And here's the last thing I'm going to say about Jehovah-Shamma, and that is that His name should teach us not to fear the future. And that's really hard. I'm glad God is a very present help in a time of trouble today, but I'm also glad He's got the future covered as well. I don't have to fear tomorrow because if God is everywhere at all times, that means He's in the future. He is already working on things right now that I'm going to be facing tomorrow. He's already there. He's preparing me for them, and He's preparing them for me. God is always taking care of our problems before we even get to those problems. And knowing that God holds the present and He holds the future as well, that should bring us great comfort. Being all present isn't just a place thing. It's time thing as well. You know, sometimes we get stuck in the past, and sometimes we live for the present, and sometimes we dread the future. But knowing that God holds the future in His hands, that really should bring us some comfort. His name is Jehovah-Shamma. The Lord is there. That means He is there at that future moment, at that future time when we're facing our problems. If we know that and we trust in that, then that should bring us comfort going forward in the future. Not to stress out. Stand with me, if you will. You know, I say this a lot. The Christian really should be the calmest person in the room. You know, we should be the calmest people when it comes to tragedy, and I know we get broken hearts sometimes, and I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about when there's a problem. We really should be the calmest people in the room because we already know God has already been here. God's already been at this time, at this moment, at this location. I haven't, but He has already been here, and He's got this thing under control. If I listen to Him and I trust in Him, He'll get me through it. And that's Jehovah-Shamma. So we got all these promises of God about His presence. Habakkuk says this, "Be strong, all you people of the land, declares the Lord, and work." I like that at the end. He says, "and work. For I am with you, declares the Lord Almighty." Hebrews says, "I'll never leave you, never will I forsake you." Matthew says, "I am with you always, even to the end of the age." So Jehovah-Shamma, the Lord is there. God is with us. But here's the last thing I'm going to say, church. He's not only with us, but He's also preparing a place for us. Isn't that what Christ said? Christ said, "Disciples, I'm leaving you." I'm kind of paraphrasing it. I'm leaving you, disciples. And they didn't want Him to leave. But I'm leaving you. But I'm going to go to prepare a place for you so that where I am, you may also be there with me. So one day, we're in the presence of God right now. He's in you. If you're a born-again believer, if you're saved, He's in you. We're in God's house. We know He dwells here. This is His house. He's also present everywhere we go. You know, God is with us. He's also in heaven as Jesus Christ. And Christ says, "I'm preparing a place for you here in my home." And then when you get here, you're going to see God. You're going to behold His glory.